Except have you ever wondered how to get a distinction for consumer studies? Bafethu, this subject is one of those subjects where you can get distinctions for every other subject except consumer studies and wonder, what am I doing wrong? What is it that I'm not doing that I am supposed to be doing? Take it from someone, guys, who got distinctions for every single term in grade 12 for consumer studies with an average of 83%, which I know a little bit of advice that can help you, Bafethu. Stay tuned, bukele video, and gain yourself a distinction for consumer studies. Bafethu, ngudorho umsizofaka kulona ijani efundile ethanda bona ama-subscriber nama-follower ejabulile, guys. Welcome back to another amazing video, Bafethu. Stay tuned and enjoy. Consumer studies, Bafethu, is one of those subjects that people often neglect because they don't consider it as important. But it actually is. For anyone who's aiming on bagging 7 distinctions, 8 distinctions, and they're aiming for those prestigious courses that want high averages and they want to boost their average by getting a distinction in this subject, trust me, Bafethu, you will do you good to get a distinction in this subject. And for anyone, Bafethu, who is also doing a subject that is highly content-based, like life sciences, like economics and history, they might benefit from this video because these principles that I'm going to teach you now are broadly applicable and they will help you a lot. What's actually interesting, Bafethu, about consumer studies is the fact that it's not one of those subjects that has topics that flow nicely into each other. These ones, Bafethu, are so broad. It's like an entire net over you as a consumer, all your habits. They talk about the consumer. They talk about housing and interior. They talk about food and nutrition. They talk about entrepreneurship. Guys, it is so broad. And sometimes it's difficult to link the different topics. And students often complain that last time I was doing food and nutrition, doing diets, all of a sudden now I'm doing floor plans and interior and design. I would always suggest to the students that always treat each topic as separate, right? And that will help you, and accept that fact that as far as topics, they're not the same, and therefore treat them as such. They all require specific and different understanding. Because in food and nutrition, you might be looking into food-borne diseases, but all of a sudden in housing interior, you might be looking at different color spectrums, what colors often go together, the color wheel, and all of those things. And each topic offers a certain amount of knowledge and beauty on its own. So point number 1, Bafethu, for consumer studies is that you should never take it as less important. Because it happens sometimes in schools. Children don't take it as important. They're like, nah, it's just an additional subject like IT or something like that. Take it as important because you want a distinction from this subject. And sometimes teachers also, they're like, no, consumer studies, use that as a free period, don't worry. As extra classes, don't worry. Consumer studies, Bafethu, you must fight for it. You must take it as important even when you study. Right? Also put it there as priority because you want to improve your mark in that specific subject. Do not fall into the trap of thinking, no, consumer studies, you know what, I'll just study it last. You will always get lower marks for a subject that you do not consider as important. When you value the subject, you subsequently value the teacher, and subsequently you will get better marks for it. So change your perspective when it comes to consumer studies. You know, even in class, sit in the front row, listen in. Have that desire to learn what is this subject actually about. Let me give consumer studies a chance. It's not a study break, Bafethu. You're not going to get a distinction in it if you still take it as if it's less important. Number 2, Bafethu, I always say this with all these content-dense subjects. The best thing it is to always study and stay ahead. Yabona lapho, guys, you can never go wrong. Ukondiko. If you study and stay ahead, first step in studying and staying ahead is knowing what topics will be covered and in what order. Some schools give you a list of these topics and how they will be covered for each and every subject, and some schools don't, right? But it is your responsibility to go to the teacher and tell them, look, ma'am, or look, sir, I want to study ahead for your subject. I need to know what topics are going to cover for this term and in what order. Right? And then you take the initiative of going home using one single trusted textbook, not this thing of multiple sources. to study and stay ahead. Create your own notes. Don't just copy and paste. And the textbook that I normally recommend is Answers Series, guys. That textbook will save your life. So you use that textbook, you create your own notes, you study and stay ahead. When the class is being taught that particular topic that you've already covered, you're not encountering it for the first time. So therefore, you will excel in that topic and you'll have more important questions to ask and you will clarify your knowledge. Another added benefit of studying and staying ahead is that sometimes teachers go a bit slower than they thought. And when coming exams, the last few topics, they don't cover very nicely like they did with the first few ones. Because they do not have enough time. But because when you've already covered these topics on your own, even if they go fast through these topics or they're like, these are just few marks, maybe these students won't suffer from them. When you would have already covered these topics and you won't have to struggle. And you will have enough time to do past papers. You'll have enough time to prepare for the exams. You'll have enough time to do all the projects that are needed for that particular subject, which is in this case, your consumer studies. So to take this advice, study and stay ahead. Number 2, in your quest of taking consumer studies seriously, what you need to do is ace every project, ace every practical. Practicals is different in different schools, but for us, we used to cook. There was cooking and it would be graded on the taste, on the texture, on the smell, and all of these things. Overall, how is your cooking, the ingredients that you used? I always suggest there, if you know tomorrow you're going to do lemon meringue pie, watch a video on YouTube on how they do lemon meringue pie. And then, if you have the time or you have the ingredient, then you can practice first. If you can't practice, then make sure that you follow the guide of ingredients step by step and understand what they actually mean. And also use quality ingredients, please. But yeah, some schools get they knit, they do all these different things, but make sure that you ace your practicals, you are prepared for them, you have your ingredients, you work with a trusted team that is going to contribute, that is going to propel you guys forward. If they tell you guys to do magazines, go all out. If there's a particular presentation that you have to do, go all out. What I realized, is that CAS work is also important. CAS work is basically this work that you do besides the exams that also contribute to your overall mark. If you boost that mark, your exam is also going to be up there. You are going to fall into that distinction criteria. Number 3, another downfall for students when it comes to consumer studies is that they omit doing past papers. I don't know why, because I always tell students, past papers are like reading through the memo before you go write the exams. Past papers are not just for exam preparation. Past papers can also be used to assess how well you've covered a specific topic. And what's nice is that even in the exam for consumer studies, they break down the sections according to the topics that I listed before. So it means that once you've covered all the topics in housing and interior, you can actually go on and do past papers only focusing in housing and interior. And if you're asking yourself, but how do I do past papers effectively? Guys, I did a video on this. And it got so many views because you guys saw the value. So check out that video if you haven't. It teaches how to do past papers effectively, guys, in a way that ensures when you'll be prepared for exams. So don't omit doing past papers for consumer studies, because if you do, you will regret and you'll ask yourself, why am I not answering these questions effectively in the exam? It's because you don't do past papers in Fundi. Hi guys, you see number 5 is for those students that are like, damn, this will hear you. And we're doing these things and we're planning on doing these things. But I just want that distinction so bad. If you want to go the extra mile, Bafeto, get into your 80s and possibly get into those 90s. You want to teach. When you're teaching the topics, you understand way beyond the students should. You understand, you foresee questions that these students might ask when you teach them. And therefore, you create methods of memory aids, methods of how do I remember this? How do I understand? How do I break this topic down? How do I remember these definitions? You're thinking in a very, very different way to most students. Therefore, you're acing the subjects. Any opportunity that arises, there's a free class, free period, you use it to teach. Teach a friend. You'll see they'll come in numbers when they see when you and your friend that you're teaching are thriving in consumer studies. And they'll ask you questions. How are you doing it? How is that you're getting 80s and 90s for consumer studies for each and every practical? Hey, You are teaching them. Use that opportunity, because teaching benefits the person being taught, but much more the person doing the teaching. And last but not least, bafethu, in any subject that you want to improve in, it's not about how many hours did you study for this subject, Dizo. How many hours did you sit doing this and that and that. It's about asking 3 simple questions, especially for these content-dense subjects. Number 1, how many topics ahead are you? Ne? Number 2, how many past papers have you covered for the topics that you've covered? Ne? The more past papers you cover, 3 to 4 to 5 past papers that you cover, means the more you will understand, because you're doing practice questions and you're using this method that I taught you how to do past papers with. Ne? And number 3, bafethu, is how many people have you taught and how many times have you taught these topics? You know, those are the 3 main questions. If you want to ace subject, if you do not have answers for these questions, then don't come to me and ask, how many hours did you study for consumer Dizo? You're not doing the basics. Do the basics, bafethu. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this video, bafethu. Leave there a comment saying, Dizo, we hear you. Dizo, we're gonna do it. And if you have any other question, drop it in that comment section. Your comment might inspire our next video. Bafethu, don't forget, in this channel, bafethu, we climb that ladder. We leave it there for someone else to climb, because there is enough space for all of us at the top, bafethu. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, bafethu, hit the notification button so that you're the first to know when another banger like this is released. Danko ke bafethu.